Do you eat, sleep, dream about anything related to eye care?
So do we. This is See What We See with Lorne Martin. My name's Lorne Cashin.
And I'm Martin Lebeau. We want to share anything that's cool about eye care.
We want you to see what we see. So sit back and enjoy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to See What We See with Lorne and Martin. Hi, Lorne. How are you?
I'm great, Martin. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. Well, we're just back from Transitions Academy. What a great event that was. It was the first one for us traveling in a long time and see some of our peers from a little bit all over the place. How'd you find it, Lorne?
It was great. It's Transitions Academy. You know, we look forward to it every year. You know, we missed it the last couple of years. Transitions is a class act. They really know how to put on a show. And being in Orlando wasn't such a shoddy place to have to go either, was it?
No, definitely not so bad. But, you know, with the heat wave we were having in Ontario here, we didn't feel so much out of place. It seems like it's pretty much the same weather.
It was hot. It was hot. It was hot, but then in all the workshops and seminars, it was cold in there.
Yeah, well, they had to keep it cool to make sure we're staying awake and comfortable and, you know, ready to learn lots of different stuff. But that's not what we're here to talk about necessarily today. While we were there, though, we had the opportunity to sit down with two great speakers, two great personality, Isabelle Tremblay from Transitions Canada and Dr. Essence Johnson. She's an optometrist from the Dallas area. And we had an interesting conversation, a uncomfortable conversation, but a needed conversation.
Yes, that's so true, Martin. You know, we talk about inclusion, diversity, and equity, and those words are thrown around just loosey-goosey all the time. And it's nice to see that people are doing something about it. It's easy to say that I care, I'm not racist, but the bottom line is you can talk the talk, but we actually sat down with some people, which includes a company, Transitions, that are not going to just talk the talk, but walk the walk. And Dr. Essence Johnson is certainly somebody who walks the walk.
Absolutely. Well, how about we just jump into it? This podcast is sponsored by Transitions Canada, a great sponsor for the Ontario Optician Association. And I believe, Lorne, we're just about to start where you were introducing the two speakers. So listen up, everybody.
Okay, thanks, Martin. And it's my pleasure to introduce our two special guests today. So we'll start with Isabelle Tremblay from Transitions. Isabelle, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and what you do at Transitions?
Yeah, so I'm Isabelle Tremblay, and I I've been working with Transitions for 20 years, actually, in various marketing and sales roles. So right now I'm responsible for Transition sales in Canada, as well as Transitions marketing programs.
Cool. We have Dr. Essence Johnson. Doctor, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Essence Johnson. I'm a community and correctional health optometrist in Dallas, Texas. I'm also on the Transitions Diversity Advisory Board.
Perfect segue. So Martin, that's what we're here to talk about today. It's not a new subject.
It's definitely not a new subject. It is a somewhat sensitive subject sometimes, but it's a subject that we need to talk about openly and have these conversations so we grow constantly, right? Because it has evolved a lot over the past, I want to say the past year, but, you know, really over the past 10, 15 years, we've seen a lot of changes and we want to keep having these changes in a positive way. So Dr. Johnson, maybe you can tell us a little bit of what you do exactly when it comes, we're going to call it DE&I. So diversity, equality, and inclusion. So yeah, please.
Well, yeah, I definitely agree. DE&I is not a new concept, but we have definitely seen a higher prioritization of it or putting more attention on it, especially in these last couple of years, I think especially since the pandemic. And we've had a lot of opportunities in eye care specifically to really focus on our DE&I efforts, looking at our hiring practices, looking at our practice locations, but I think even more specifically, looking at our patients and how we are treating them, what we are treating them for, and what type of doctors are treating these patients. So there's now this extra category of looking at not only how DE&I is affecting like our patients in our community, but how do we fit in this continuum of DE&I initiatives, strategies, and even definitions of kind of what is diversity, this equity, and this inclusion piece.
That's a perfect segue because you mentioned about the doctor aspect to it. And I noticed one of your projects is the 13% promise, which I was looking at. And I thought that was something really cool when you start looking at statistics, when you look at groups, specifically Black people. When you see the population of Black people, let's say in the US, and then you look at how many optometrists there are. And it's really easy. As an old dinosaur, I am. Growing, we could get it all off our shoulders by just saying, I'm not racist. I'm the least racist person you'll ever meet. But now it's gone that much further with these new terminology, which breaks it down a little bit more. And I think that I'd love to hear more about this program that you're working with, or did you start this program?
So the 13% Promise is one of the initiatives of Black Eye Care Perspective. So two of my colleagues in the optometric field, Dr. Adam Ramsey and Dr. Daryl Glover, they actually founded Black Eye Care Perspective or came up with the idea after going to a conference. They were at a conference and they literally said, like, sheesh, there aren't other people that look like us. Like, where's all of our colleagues at that are identifying as Black or African American? So they took it as their personal kind of mission to gather all of the Black eye care providers together. We have had other organizations where we can get together, but with the age of social media being on that cusp of kind of like the millennials and the Gen Z people, getting people together in more of a social platform. And during the pandemic, it really led to this virtual kind of speed dating, so to speak. This is how we got even more involved with Transitions and other companies, but even individuals that we were craving interaction, craving attention. And so we were able to leverage social media, able to leverage video conferencing platforms to meet our colleagues in a way that we haven't met them before. And in these meetings kind of have became like a think tank where we see so much social injustice and racial unrest going on, specifically in North America or in the United States. We were like, how is this affecting our lives? One, of course, as Black individuals, but even as professionals. How is this affecting you, whether you identify as Black or not? And why is it that when we look around, we are not seeing colleagues that look like us? And in some cases, we're not even seeing the patients that look like us. But we know that Black people exist, other minorities exist. And then you wonder too, when you're just looking at the number of eye care professionals in the United States, for instance. I think it's a very interesting fact. I reside in Dallas, and in the Dallas airport, the Love Field one, it talks about how many people come through the airport daily. There are less optometrists in the United States than there are people that actually go through the airport all the time. So if we're saying there's about 44,000 or so optometrists, 60,000 when we add in ophthalmologists, but only 2% or so identify as Black or African American, that means out of all the people who go through the airport, maybe less than 1,000 people identify as Black that also identify as some type of eye care provider. And if we add in even opticianry, that percentage doesn't really change too much. The number of people doesn't change too much. So our 13% promise is, how do we align the eye care industry with the United States Census that says about 13.4% of the populations identify as Black and African American. And we're addressing that on many different levels in connecting us as eye care providers together so that we know our internal community, connecting ourselves with our external community when it comes to people who identify as Black or African American or other minoritized ethnicities. And then also, how do we create more doctors that look like us? So it's one thing to identify us all, and we don't think there's that many. So now, in order to change that like 1.8 or 2 or 3% to get to 13%, we physically need to birth and create new eye care providers in all areas of the eye care industry. So that's optometry, ophthalmology, and optician.
Oh, that's very interesting. I mean, I don't know exactly what the numbers would be in Canada, but it's probably very, very similar. So what's the role in transition in all this, Isabelle? How does that come to fruition on transition side?
Yeah, Transitions has a long history in working on that topic because we think it's an important discussion to have. And we think too that the industry can use some help in terms of education on that topic, but also about providing resources for the industry to better service some of these population and provide better eye care to them. So that's why we launched this initiative in Canada this year, in which we started with the population in general, but really looking at those subpopulations too in Canada. And for our multicultural effort, we are focusing in Canada on the Black Canadian population, the Aboriginals, as well as the Asian group, which that encompasses many different ethnicities. The survey result then helped us have a roundtable that we hosted in Victoria back in April, and Dr. Johnson was actually hosting that roundtable for us. And from that roundtable, we were able to have those important discussions and then discuss some of the resources or things we could do to provide better eye care in terms of diversity and servicing those subgroups as well.
So things have to change, because what I've noticed over the last number of years, if you have an ad and you have a group of people, or a company is showing their team, and they're so proud now that you see different colors within the group of people and different ethnicities and that. And here we've done our job and all that. But when you look at the people, how did they get there? Like some person probably had a really tough road to get there. So that's, I think, where the equality comes in. So you can have inclusion and you can have diversity, but how do you get everybody up there? You have to help them. You have to give them a step up and that. And I think it's great that Transitions now is looking at how we deal with our patients, because everyone's special in their own way. And then with Dr. Johnson, what you're talking about is from the other end of it is how do you get more professionals involved with it. I just go back to part of your the Black eye care perspective, because I think one of the programs that you work with is the pre-optometry club. So I'm just wondering, because I think of things from a very much an opticianry standpoint too. And we're always looking to get more people into opticianry. There's always a shortage of opticians. And with the diversity we have in Canada, just like the US, we want to service our patients properly. So it's good when we bring in people who have the background and understand it. So can you tell us a little bit about your pre-optometry club?
Yeah, so when I got brought on to Black Eye Care Perspective as the Chief Visionary Officer, I brought along, of course, another colleague with us, because it's always more fun to do things with friends. And together we were like, what can we do to help, bring value to this organization? What is something we can do for our part? So me and Dr. Jacoby Cleaver, who's our Director of Program Management, we co-founded the Black Eye Care Perspective Pre-Optometry Club. And we actually co-advise it. So we meet on the 13th of every month. And the initial idea was to create that community. I think a lot, and when we're talking about pipelines and how do we just get more of anything, especially in the eye care profession, we need to kind of group all the people together and be able to group all the resources together and to teach people, like you're saying, that journey to get there. Because regardless of age, race, or ethnicity, we each had steps that we had to take to get to our goal. And more than likely, one person or multiple people helped us along that path. And I think some of increasing that popularity or increasing these number of eye care professionals is for us to be those role models, those mentors, those allies, those sponsors to help them along. So we put out a call for the group, and we kind of started with our own little tributes. We each had our own mentees that we brought together in the group, and soon one person became a group of 5, became a group of 10, and now we're over 100 members, probably even over 120 members in just 2 years, because word of mouth, it traveled very well. I think what is very unique about our pre-optometry club too is that it's the only national pre-optometry club, so it's open to anyone anywhere. It's virtual. So even if you're Canadian and you're interested in the eye care profession, you can join the club. We have some interest even in Africa and other places. We're willing to grow this network and community. Internationally is great because I think when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's the cross collaboration that's very important. It's that sharing of resources. It's getting those different perspectives, which is why we use that term in our name. The other piece of it is now, okay, we have everyone together, but we're giving you that professional input. And then if there's anything that we can't answer, because of course we're not the answers to everything, then we want to connect people to those other resources. So in the club over the last couple of years, we've been able to provide, of course, that mental and emotional support. We bring in a performance psychologist where we can, just work over this thing now called imposter syndrome, where you want to do something, but you may not feel like you're the most qualified, or can you actually do it because you've never seen someone in your similar circumstance that was successful of it. So I think a lot of that helps by just being that image for them, that automatically that gives a sense of comfort and a sense of confidence. Then to tell someone, like I like to say, you don't need yes people in your life, but you need yes you can people in your life. And that's where we are, the yes you can. If Dr. Kleber was here, he is very big of using like the metaphor, pushing people in the pool. When you're ready, he's that one to push you in the pool. And then, we won't let you drown, we'll help you swim. And for some people, that approach takes right away. With other people, kind of takes that repetition to get your feet wet until you start feeling comfortable. And that's where we are. We want to meet students where they're at. We want to let them know that we are available as people, that we are accessible with our industry partners to help them along, that they have that community of support. And hoping that is something that we can extend to all of the facets of eye care, where we just have our own community of students that are interested in these pre-optometric or ophthalmologic or opticianry type of professions. And we're not only saying like, yes, you can do this, but let us also help and show you the way on where to do it, and let you know that you have a network and a community of support to help you through all those bumps on the road. Because it's definitely true that it's going to be a journey, and I tell them it's not easy, but you can do it. But I want to be the first person to tell you it's not going to be easy. And once we get that out of the way, we have seen a lot of success. Every year when we have a cohort of students that's about 30 to 40 students, about 80 to 90% of them get into an optometry program, and they're able to get connected even with some scholarships, some that we fund within our own part of our organization through our Diversity Perspective nonprofit, some that we partner with the eye care industry, and then some is just giving them the knowledge that if you are this type of professional student, some of those other external scholarships, apply for them. We've just simply, slid into the DMs, as they say, and told people, hey, apply for that. And they're like, hey, Dr. Johnson, I got this scholarship. And you're like, yeah, you're a graduate student. Apply for the money. So I think some of it is showing people, that how to fish type of approach, but also letting them know that there is a place for them to go to get those kind of helping resources.
No, that's great. I mean, a good friend of ours always told me something of years ago, and I always stuck. You always rise by the grace of others. But when you get there, it's your responsibility actually to help the people as well, so they can get there as well, which, stuck with me for years. And I think it's an awesome statement. But you mentioned there's a group, there's a network. Could you, share with us what that group is? Where can they find that group on either social media or online, so our listeners can go and have a look?
Well, yeah. So Black Eye Care Perspective has a website, www.blackeyecareperspective.com. We're on social media, so on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn as @Black Eye Care Perspective. But if you're particularly interested in the Pre-Optometry Club, the short way to find us is @BEPPOC. That's the easiest way to find the Black Eye Care Perspective Pre-Optometry Club on Instagram and on Facebook. So we're always welcoming more follows, but even more than that, for you to actually say, hey, we need help. It is free to join the club. We have great industry partnership that makes that available. We just want people willing and available and ready to say, yes, I am ready to do it. So
that's great. We'll make sure we write that down as well in the description of the podcast.
So that's excellent. And that's the perspective of getting more professionals involved and getting them on the path and helping them out. So Isabelle, I'm looking at you because here we're hosted by Transitions. Thank you very much for having us. Another wonderful Transitions Academy. So Transitions is going to help us as professionals deal with our patients. And one thing I saw the survey you did, which was an eye-opener. But well, as a professional, I knew that certain groups have certain diseases, maybe a little bit more so. But it also showed that not everybody's aware that their group is at high risk for things, right? How's Transitions going to help us as dispensers, as professionals, to deal with our patients and make it a more inclusive practice? Because you guys are always coming up with resources,
Yes, and from that multicultural roundtable, we will publish a white paper, and that white paper will have some great information on those various population ethnicities, but also in regards to tools that the industry can provide to provide better eye care to those ethnicities. And from that white paper, we will also launch a diversity course for the optical industry. And Dr. Johnson is actually delivering this diversity course here at Transitions Academy, but we'll have a Canadian version of it for Canada that relates to our subpopulations as well. And that discussion for transitions and resources will, continue beyond this year and in the future because it's such an important topic for us.
Mm-hmm. One thing that just is inside that when I looked at the survey, almost every group wanted to be friends with their eye care professional. They want to become friends, right? And I see it. I've been an optician for 50 years, and I have a lot of friends, a lot of patients. You spend a lot of time one-on-one, and as opticians, we're fitting people, so it's very close. Contact lens fitting to real close proximity, and we're accessible because I'll use our tagline: we're the front line of eye care. And so I found that interesting because you think, well, they don't want to be my friend. They just want me to fit them with their glasses. I want them to come in and I want them to be happy, but they actually want to build a relationship. And I think it's time again to go back with healthcare and everything to really know your clients, to be their friend and to know their trials and tribulations and to be able to deal with them in the way that they like to be dealt with in a compassionate way. It's really changed, like this diversity, inclusion, and I'm so bad with it, and equality. There's so much packed into those three words now. When we first talked about doing this podcast, I thought, okay, well, diversity, okay, and wait, inclusion, that looks like diversity. Equality, well, aren't we there? No, we're not there. So there's so much behind each one of these words. And I think we still have to study that a lot more and speak to people like yourself and have Transitions educate us and bring stuff forward for us so that we can be better professionals, because that's why we're doing it. We're in healthcare. We want to help people. We want to make them feel good.
Absolutely. And that's probably a perfect segue. Most people that be listening to us, they work for a company or they own a company. And again, we said, well, we don't think we're racist or anything like that, but we don't necessarily have a program in place. We don't know exactly, we don't have a protocol when it comes down to hiring or taking care of our client a certain way. Where can they get started? How can they start developing this and making sure that everybody in the office is on the same page or in the company on the same page? Where does that start?
I think during the roundtable, some of the suggestions that came up, and not only just suggestions, a lot of the doctors, they were already modeling this before. And I think that is step one, sharing those best practices, learning how maybe someone else does things differently. We talked about first, defining diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think people, when they hear those words, they do get a little hesitant because they're thinking like, oh no, what are you making me do? But I think first we have to take a step back and kind of see what does that mean for each of us. I think one part is a lot of people, and what I noticed at the roundtable too, being a minority is a different concept in Canada than it is in the United States, especially if we're talking specifically in regards to race, because you guys have a very community mindset of like, first, we're all Canadian, which is very different in America, that even though I identify as a Black American, that is not how people classify or identify me. I think what was very interesting in Canada too, it isn't kind of what other people label you. You get to have ownership of, that title and definition. And it's kind of a nation collective that first we're Canadians, then we're everything else. So I think that already adopting that type of mindset is something to see for, especially for those of us in America. I think the other piece of it is a lot of the practitioners, they started in their own offices first. So DE&I meant to them knowing each and every single one of their staff. When we're talking about building those relationships, how can you build those relationships with your patients if you guys don't have that kind of familiar relationship within their office? One of the doctors even shared that everybody who comes into their office, he does it for his staff and his patients, they get like a personality assessment. So he can really know, like, how do they think? How do they flow? How does this type interact with that type? How can we match and pair people? So even before we look at, someone's ethnicity or gender, and a lot of the doctors were like, yeah, I don't even have that on my intake. Like, I don't see anyone as male or female or anything in between. I don't see anyone really as, Black or white or any of those things. I just see them as a person that are here with their own unique traits and attributes. How can I connect with those traits and attributes? How can we use those traits and attributes to have a good business model? And then how can we do that to have a good patient relationship? And I thought that that was a very good way to think of it, because coming from the States, everything is literally, ironically, all the puns intended, very black and white at first. And you're so focused on those pieces, either being this or that, we don't even have time to kind of get to the person, to get to the personality. And I thought that that was a very good way to look at it, to first see, where you may be unique, where you may be a little different, where you may be a minority in this situation. I think one good bonding place is, if you're an eye care provider, newsflash, we're a minority. We're a minority in the healthcare system. We're being marginalized. I mean, we all have an experience with being a minority, whether we realize it or not. We all have an experience about, maybe not getting as much resources or funding or recognition from the government, how we're fighting so hard to just make sure that access to eye care is equitable for all. How we're fighting to see that, yes, glasses are kind of like braces, but we also have like this fashion piece and component. And I thought it was very interesting talking with the Canadian doctors, where they're like, oh no, we would never upsell anyone. If down the street it costs this, we just want to, give them the service. We want to stay very friendly. And I'm like, wow, that's like not a very American sales model at all. But it's like, I'm not offering you 2 pairs because I want to take advantage of you. I'm offering you 2 pairs because don't you own more than 2 pairs of shoes or pants or underwear? And that's how I view, glasses, as a fashion statement. It's something that I need a new piece every day of the week. So I think really showing how we view diversity, equity, and inclusion, and taking away that stigma and that bias that it's a negative thing, and really teaching people the positives of how it is, and how even in, say, a homogenous group, I like to use Squid Games as an example on Netflix, that even though everyone is the same, there is still diversity. There are still differences. And even if you're in a place where we all may appear the same culturally, then there's something else that's distinguishing us. And it's the way that we're viewing those differences, does it become a negative bias or a positive bias? And I think that that's kind of where we start with having these conversations, with figuring out, where do I fit into this piece first? And then now, how can I extend that out and building a relationship with other people to understand them, and then extending it to, our eyewear and eye care practices on, how do we leverage these differences to have more equitable care, to have better health outcomes, but to also promote our profession in a bigger and a stronger way and light as well.
So you have to find that happy medium, because you can go into a practice and you want to institute all this stuff, but you can't go tripping over yourself to go overboard to where now that person's actually uncomfortable. I'm going to get the verbiage and everything to say it, and now you're trying too hard, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I like what you were saying that the doctor was talking about. You get to know the person, and then you could add in how they became that person, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. So I see where it's not as simple to do. You can come in one day and say to your staff, okay, everybody, today it's not quite that simple. So Isabelle, did the new program with Transitions, is that something that's being launched? It's going to give us tools to work with?
Yes. So in a few months, by September, we'll have our white paper posted on the transitions.com website on the pro section. And then from that, we will be launching various resources to the industry.
Because I see it's the cultural connection. So that's the program. Is that the banner it's going to be under? The transition cultural.
The cultural connection was actually because, as I mentioned earlier, the multicultural efforts for transitions, we have a long history with it, and we had this platform that was probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But now it won't be rebranded under cultural connection, but we will just make it a multicultural diversity effort, and we'll have a specific section on the Transitions Pro site with the future resources that we'll be launching for the industry.
And that's wonderful. Again, Transitions, it's nothing new for you doing this. You've been behind initiatives like this for many, many years. Great corporate citizens. They just, both for us professionals and for the public.
Well, again, if a leader like Transition shows it and demonstrate it to everybody that attends Transitions Academy or any other lectures or anything like that, it inspires you at the same time. Because I'm going to go back to what Dr. Johnson was saying earlier about doing the test to get to know your patient's personality a bit better. But that should not stop at the office. That should not stop at work. This is a mindset that you have to have actually all the time. You should look at everybody the same way, not just because it's work, right? And I think that makes things so much easier at the long run. Again, not stepping on your own feet, because let's be honest, sometimes people are scared sometimes of saying a few things because they're not sure if they're saying the right thing. But again, if you don't have that conversation, you're never going to know. So again, the mindset, I think, is very, very important. And I see Dr. Johnson just nodding away. I'm okay, good. I'm saying the right thing here.
No, because I think one of the things when you do a lot of things as someone who educates on this, someone who wants to learn more about it, and then listening to what other people teach, normally the first rule is be okay with getting uncomfortable. So it is not about, being in your comfort zone. Oh, like the number one rule is to be open-minded, be ready to be uncomfortable, and be able to also be okay with there not being like a resolution or a conclusion. And I think that that's where there are some misconceptions. DE&I, it's a journey. It's not a one and done. It's not a 10 and done. It's not 1,000 and done. It's like you're saying, it should be our way of life. It should be embedded and inbred in us. And when you travel to other places, you kind of see in other just countries that it already is a little bit further along. If there's anything that I noticed at the roundtable, I was like, man, America kind of doesn't have it going on like that. Just to hear so many of the doctors, like, not that they don't see race how we normally see it, but it's not the primary defining piece. That first, just being a person is the defining piece. And you think, like, how come that's not just how it is? All the other stuff should be the icing, should be the added. It shouldn't be where we start. And we get so caught up on, pronouns or checking this box or checking that box. And that was some of the things that came up at the roundtable, that there's really no boxes to check. It's more boxes when you say you're not Canadian, and but the first box is, are you Canadian? Yes or no. And then we kind of go from there. So it was very just unique discussing with everyone, and now having to focus on race. It was a little uncomfortable, but it helped us hear stories and hear other people's points of view. There was just a lot of very just powerful stories to understand individuals, to understand cultures differently, to understand their interaction with where they live, the interaction with the healthcare system, the interaction with the government. I think that those were very valuable pieces. And then just sharing and hearing how other people do it in the office. And some of these things were easy things, small things, and I think more people are getting away from this in their optical, where we lived past tense in a world that was very binary, that you used to go into opticals and they're like, you're a man, you're a woman, you're a kid. Those are the three things. And so something simple we were talking about is, having your frames arranged by color or style or brands. If someone is gravitating to a frame, like, frames have no gender, they have no ethnicity. Like, let a person, speak to whatever frame is speaking to them, and finding out, pairing them, kind of like how you would do, I guess, when you're adopting a pet. You're adopting this pair of glasses to be you, to express your personality. So even just getting away from those pieces, some people were talking about just their collateral and the promotional materials that they have, that if you're in a certain demographic, making sure that those pamphlets are reflecting the person of your demographic. And in some cases, we work with Transitions to get things that match with us, culturally, or some people are creating their own. You're becoming your own model, in these types of things. And then we talked about supplier diversity. A lot of times we tend to go with certain brands of frames, but there are so many other independent brands that are out there, so many other ones with like cultural stories or connections, or they're made with more style. So really looking at eyewear, it's not just this product, but it's a statement and an external expression of you, and using that as your marketing and branding tool. A person's not going to come into your office if you prescribe them glasses that never get worn on their face. But when I love a pair of glasses and other people recognize that, those glasses look good, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel good, not only as a doctor of optometry, but I'm a patient. I'm a consumer too. So it makes me proud when they're like, ooh, look at your lenses. And I'm like, yeah, that's Transition.
Well, that's just it. Our patients are advertising. Right? And when someone says, you got to be honest, if you don't really feel something suits, at the end of the day, you'll sell anyone whatever they want. Just like, you've always heard the stories of the little boy picks up the pink frame. I think it was on Facebook a few years ago. It was a huge story, and they just went nuts at this, they wouldn't let this young fellow, I guess, wear the pink frame or whatever. Whereas now it seems to be coming around. I'm hoping that things are changing. I look at even my children, and they're now adults, but I was really blown away because they were coming home from school when they were small, and they were talking about this friend of theirs at school, a young guy. And I always hear about him and all the things they do, blah, 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 blah. And they would say, oh, he wasn't strong throwing the ball, or they would describe him that. And then when he finally met him quite a few months later, he came in and he was black. And I said, my children never mentioned the color of their friend. It was an aha moment for me, because I know past generations, unfortunately, they'd say, oh, he was an Asian fellow I met, a black guy. Like you were just talking about, let's define people by who they are. Just like I hate or love everybody. I'll judge you on what you say and do. I don't care what you look like, what your hair, how you dress. Like I'll see someone with studs all over their face, and I think, oh my God. And then I turn around and go, hey, I'm an old man with a ponytail. So we're all expressing ourselves. So we don't judge people by how they look. We judge them by their deeds. So I really think that hopefully the world is on the right track now. I feel in Canada we are. We're so multicultural in Canada, and it just, from 1967 or so, when I first started seeing in our neighborhood, where you start seeing the waves of different people coming from Europe and different places. And it's evolved so much. And Toronto is so multicultural, right? I think it's wonderful. Like you go to one of our events, it's colorful, and it's wonderful, right?
Wonderful.
So I'm really hoping that we're on the right track. And I think with initiatives that you're working with and what Transitions is working with, I think it's really propelling us along this path. And I think it'll help in generations to come. Hopefully, we don't have to wait for the new generations, that people will come around and judge people for what they do and what they say, not from what they look like or where they come from.
Well, and I think that's a very good point in a saving grace, and it got brought up by your dear friend Robert. He was telling us that the new generation just sees things differently, and I think that is going to be the evolution. They are, even my kids, they're growing up in a world where there's a lot of ways for a person to express and identify themselves, so it's not going to be different for them. That's all they've ever known. They've never lived in a world before where it was only this or that, or their friends, it's fortunate for my daughter that she has friends that look like her. She has friends that don't look like her. She has an interest in so many different languages. And to that point, they're not using, the color of one's skin or ethnicity as their descriptive factor. At the roundtable, that was brought up in a personal story where they were showing the board and what a lot of the newer generation is seeing is kind of that lack of diversity. They're questioning it. It's not, oh, the whole board is just old white men. It's, where are the women at? Where are your people of color? You don't know this person and that person. So hopefully just already being born into that different mindset and seeing the world very colorful and vibrant and diverse will be continuing that trend that we are, because this new generation will definitely hold us accountable for that.
Here's a good quote for that, because what you're saying is all the different people, because all the input into your life. Because there's a guy named Lev Vygotsky who one of my wife's heroes. I guess he was an educator so many years ago. And I'm going to butcher it, but it's through others we become ourselves. And I did say it right. But it's so true, because we do become ourselves. We've been changed just talking to you. You learn from it's a give and take thing. And we're affected. When people say I'm not affected by this, yes, you were. You're talking about it. You were affected by it. So I think it's wonderful that we're exposed to all the ethnicities and colors and everything else. And it makes for a much more interesting life. It really does.
Absolutely. And I think it's by listening to the experiences, people's experiences and journey, that's how you understand even more from where they've been and where they are now. And obviously you're going to pick some stuff. They're like, oh yeah, okay, I get that, because I didn't go through the exact same thing as you did, but I might have touched on a little bit of something. So now you can actually have that connection with that person. I mean, my kids are half Filipino and half French Canadian, right? So to them, there's no difference. It doesn't matter what ethnicity we are. But I think it's important to say as well that it's not just about ethnicities, right? And that's what we've been talking about mainly so far today, but we have to think of all the other minorities as well. Again, listening to people, learning their story, I think will open people's eyes even more and accept them even more.
Yeah, it's been a cruel world in history, historically.
Yeah.
It's time. And it seems like we start getting somewhere and then something happens. And but I have to be a little pompous here and say in Canada, because we watch what goes on south of the border. Unfortunately, it's all about the rest.
It's news, right?
Yeah.
It's all
Some of the things they were telling me, I said, that's what they're showing you? That didn't happen like that.
Yeah, well, we're watching news, and it's the way they present it.
Yeah.
So we're not saying everything's fake news, but it's all what you want to pump up and how you want to present things. But I just think I feel we're on the right track. At least I can only go by our experience and my environment, and I really see. I live in a very Asian neighborhood, and I'm the minority in my neighborhood. We sit there because my friend across the street go, we're the only 3 Jews, I think, in this whole neighborhood. I said, well, it's wonderful, but we're not visible, at least, But the bottom line is, it's wonderful because the people I'm meeting and it's just, I don't know, it's a wonderful world. It's a colorful world, as you're saying. And I think we should really take advantage of that. And I just really think this is a great opportunity for us to sit around and talk about this. And I really appreciate Transitions, introducing us to Dr. Johnson and the opportunity that he gave us to talk.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for being here. And we're hoping we're going to have maybe a part deux, and when the white paper is going to come out, we can discuss a little bit more and talk about the courses and everything else, because we would love to share that with our listeners. I think it's really important. And again, continuing the conversation, right? Something else is going to pop up by then, I'm sure, and then we can talk about it.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Isabelle. Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. It was great sitting down with you guys actually live, because usually we do this on Zoom most of the time, we're a mic and everything else. And it's always great to be able to sit down and have these types of conversations. So again, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Very much appreciate it. All the best.
Yeah, and enjoy the festivities this Transition Academy. Hope you guys have a great time. We know we will. We'll meet tons of people again. So it's always pleasant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, Lorne, that was a great conversation we had with Isabelle and Dr. Johnson. I mean, diversity, equality, and inclusion is an ever-evolving topic. It's never an easy topic to talk about, but it needs to keep on going forward, and things are going to continue to change.
Yeah, well, the conversation has to continue. And I'm hopeful that, again, actions will be taken. I found it really interesting and very promising when you see a person like Dr. Johnson, for instance, with her program, where she's trying to get the Black community to get into optometry more, to try to level the playing field, so to speak, to where percentages aren't so lopsided between the percentage, for instance, of Black people in America compared to the number of Black optometrists. There should be a little more of a balance there, but everyone's path isn't that easy. So it was wonderful to see that Dr. Johnson has her 13% project. So things like that are really good. So now hopefully there'll be opportunities and more roads to get people to achieve, to get up there. And you can't have inclusion without equality.
You're absolutely right, Lorne. And I think, again, we should do another podcast on this down the road and see how things have changed. And hopefully maybe Dr. Essence Johnson can join us again on this. Or there's other personalities here, even here in Ontario, that we discuss this topic with. It's definitely interesting, and it's definitely something that we have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and it's great that Transitions, they're committed to this project and to helping eye care professionals, whether it's within running their practice, right through to how they treat their patients, how everyone has different needs. And also part of that, we heard that Isabelle said they're coming out with a white paper too. So there are a lot of things where we got to get people in. They've got to be educated as to if their ethnicity puts them in a higher bracket for certain eye diseases, and that education is very important. So it looks like Transitions is going to get more into that. So I'm looking forward to the tools that Transitions comes out for us as eye care professionals, how we can educate our patients, also make for a more welcoming practice to welcome everybody who walks in our doors.
I couldn't agree with you more on this one, Lorne. Well, thank you so much again to Transitions Canada for sponsoring the podcast. Thank you to Isabelle Tremblay from Transitions Canada and Dr. Essence Johnson. It was a great conversation and looking for more to that. So Lorne, until next time. And everybody, until next time on See What We See with Lorne and Martin.
Take care, Martin. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to See What We See. This podcast is brought to you by the Ontario Opticians Association. For more information or to become a member, go to our website at www.ontario-opticians.com. For all the latest updates, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Ontario Opticians Association, on Twitter, OOA_frontline, and on LinkedIn, Ontario-Opticians-Association. Don't miss an episode of See What We See, and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite streaming service. Thank you from the Ontario Opticians Association, the voice of opticians for 75 years.